So in our last video, we talked about variables and assignment, a little bit technical, but now we're just going to focus on variables. And variables store a number of things. They can be strings, integers, booleans. We also have sets of data, which could be lists, dictionaries, tuples. We'll save that for another video. We're also going to talk about f-strings and cast typing today as well. How do we assign variables a string? We can create a variable. Start by creating a variable called name. And to instantiate a string, we use single quotes or double quotes. And for this variable, we will use my name, Tyler. Now, variables can also be, strings can also be numbers as well. We'll say numbers equals the number 12. Now, integers can also be assigned to variables. And let's just call this num1. And an integer is a whole number, let's say 50. So then strings and the integers can be assigned as well as floats. So what are floats? Floats are numbers with a floating point decimal. Let's declare a variable num2 and assign it the value 10.5. This is a float or a floating point number, as you can see the point. So floats can represent other numbers other than whole numbers. So yes, they could represent a whole number such as 10, or partial numbers, 10.5, 10.6, 10.7599 is as much as we want. Now what about booleans? Booleans are expressions of true or false that we will most likely find in if statements and are very useful. So let's make a variable called correct and assign it true. We'll make another variable called wrong and say that's false, assigned false. So these are booleans, and booleans can come in if statements. Let's just make a simple if statement to find if correct is true. So if this variable is true, and so to do that, we will print, if it is true, it will print yes. Yes, this is true, the Boolean true. Now, what about for the variable wrong, which is assigned a false Boolean? And now this will not print anything because it is false. So this if statement is only printing yes if this variable, whatever it is, this case it's the wrong variable, it's only printing this out if this is true, which we know we assigned this false. So numbers can also be true or false. 0 and 1. 1 in the if statement is seen as true, where 0 in the if statement is seen as false. So let's print this, and we see nothing happens because this is false. Now what if we do the other one? Yes, this is true. Now for the f string, we can do this by calling a print statement, typing the word F, followed by these quotations. So let's say my name is, and then with F strings, we can actually reference variables by these brackets. So my name is, and then if we come up and reference the name variable, which is my name, and print that, now it will say my name is Tyler. And if we come up here, and let's change this to 32, that's my age, and say my age is, whoops, let's run this, forgot to run that. My age is 32. Now with typecasting, what is typecasting? Well, typecasting comes into play when we need to turn, let's say, a string into an integer, or a integer into a float, or a float into an integer. It could be a number of things. So let's take this string that's number 32. And or actually, what we can do is say new num equals, and now we want to turn the variable number, which is equal to the string 32, we want to turn this 32 into an integer. So what we'll do is say int, and then number, we'll pass that, and actually what we can do is use this type call and pass in new num, and this will tell us what type it is now. So remember, before it was a string, and now it is an integer, int. Now, what if we turn that into an integer, but we want to make it a float? Well then, we can say, just drop down a line, say, make another one, say, let's just say number 2, and we'll say float, and then pass in new num, and now let's reference this number 2, and now it's equal to a float. And we can print this, number 2, and we see it's 32.0 now. This has been converted into a float number. So we can do these, we can even do these with booleans as well. For instance, let's just print here and say bool 1. So it's taking the number 1, turning it into a boolean, and as we talked before, does number 1 equivalent to true or false when it comes to programming? Well, it goes to true. And we talked about that 0 is false. So we see the bool turn these numbers into booleans as well. Now we can also do other things such as string, str for strings. And if we did this, it's a 0. Let's see here, I think we can wrap this in type. And yes, it's a string. So we turn the 0 into a string. Although on Google Colab, when we run it, it just shows it as a 0. But indeed, if we pass it through the type here, this is indeed a string. So some very cool things we can do with typecasting, F strings as well. Try on your own to create your own F strings. Perhaps create your own variable with your own name and age. and try to make an F string that says your own age and your name. And then you can mess around with these typecasting, try to change certain values, integers into strings, or strings into integers as well. I hope this was useful. These are basic Python principles we will use later on in the course, but are no doubt essentials that we need to know.